Thanks, John. Okay, last speaker is going to be Bob Okanowski. He's going to tell us what's going on with the legislature and some other nice things, right?
Always. Thanks, Kevin. Well, first off, thank you to O'Connor and Drew for putting this on. They're our accounting partner at the association, and we really value their partnership. All the great things that they do for the dealer body here in Massachusetts and New England, and thank you for being here today. For a little interlude from all your other daily nonsense that you have to put up with. I'm Bob Okanowski, Executive Vice President of the Massachusetts State Auto Dealers Association. I don't have any PowerPoint. I just have what I have to say. With us today is also Peter Brennan for our office. And I would just say that as an association, we represent the 427 franchised auto dealers in Massachusetts. And we remained open entirely throughout the pandemic last year. We never took a day off, did not shut down, no whining about closures, this or anything else. We put out incredible work product, I say, as a team to take care of the dealers throughout all the insanity that government was throwing at us. In terms of shutdowns, restrictions, stuff that just never made sense. And obviously they did a lot of it without input from the business community. And I think we were able to weather it pretty well. I'll tell you one thing, between some of the presentations today, and we've been hammering on this for 5-7 years now, is that dealers have to have more of an internet presence, an active internet presence, just not a website with some goofy car pictures and figures and stuff, and a phone number or an email address that goes nowhere. You really have to be out there promoting yourself, promoting your inventory, promoting your services. And we have had a number of speakers over the years between seminars and webinars and everything else promoting that. And the dealers who had been developing a strong internet presence over the last half a decade, I think weathered the pandemic very well last year. The guys who depend on the blowing in the wind, waving of the arms and the balloons and everything else didn't do so well. And they had to play a lot of catch up. And moving forward out of the pandemic, it's what are you doing to prepare yourself for the next disaster or emergency or disruption that's coming? And it's coming. Government got a good taste of power, both at the state and the federal level. They were not shy to use it. You see what's going on in some of the big cities now between mask mandates and vaccination mandates and everything else. And that's going to be a wave of the future. So the next hiccup, health-wise, prepare for more of the same. I say this is the way I see these politicians up on Beacon Hill in Congress talking. And so whatever you saw in 2020, whatever you're seeing now, I'd say prepare more of it in the future, because this stuff's not going away. In terms of getting past the COVID, we are going to have our auto show in January, which means we're going to have a party, which is good. We missed this year because of the various rules that the BCEC and the state had in place. We also are looking forward to our NADA convention in March in Vegas, which we will be having a party with O'Connor and Drew at to honor our Time Dealer of the Year candidate, which I can announce now is Joe Shaker from the Shaker Auto Group. Moving throughout some of these disruptions that the dealers are facing now, it really shows how much of it the dealers are at the mercy of the factories on a number of fronts. And whether it was a factory that canceled chip orders because they didn't think they'd be selling cars, if it was chips that were caught up in a factory fire, weather disruptions, COVID shutdowns because of illness. The chip thing, it caught everyone off guard, and the dealers are really suffering for it in the sense of a shortage of inventory. And because of the inventory, you get the blowback from the consumer. Where's the cars that I want to look at? How come the prices are so high? These are, a lot of complaints. Dealers may be happy because the grosses are up and the nets are up, but they have to answer to a consumer every day. and if the consumer's not happy, and the consumer's complaining to the press, or the consumer's complaining to the AG about some perceived slight, it blows back on our industry. And so that's something that we're going to have to continue to face and be prepared for moving forward. But it's, you know, depending on the manufacturer you talk to, you're looking at mid-2022 or 2023 as getting some equilibrium back into the marketplace. And it's not just getting cars to the lots, it's getting cars to meet the pent-up demand that's there, and then getting cars to the lots as well. So it's a twofold process. You know, dealers are great at hitting numbers every 30 days, but there's got to be some long-term thought here on how you're prepared for the future. And so we try to work with our dealer members on that and get them ready for not only the next disaster, but also where is this all heading as we move forward. On the political front, it is a little unsturdy. On the political front, you know, federally, if you saw that film clip from this morning, you know, clearly the progressives are looking to speed that car right into a ditch somewhere. You know, I don't know if you caught this, but if you saw, bless you, if you saw over the last few days, Bill Clinton was in the hospital with an infection of sorts. And it struck me that you were looking at the last centrist Democrat to have any real power in Washington. And as he, you know, is hitting the golden years and fading away, so has that part of the party. And it's definitely evident that the progressives have grabbed hold of the steering wheel, have used Joe Biden as the front to push an agenda that is not good for any of us in this room. Maybe good for the accountants because you still have your numbers to play with and everything. But in terms of dealers, in terms of dealership operations, if they have any type of control over government for a long term, it will not be good for this industry. They're looking to make wholesale changes at tax level, regulatory level, the type of products we're going to be selling, the way we're going to be compensating our employees. It's from a top to bottom disruption of an industry that has a big role to play in our country. We're 20% of the retail economy. At the Massachusetts level, we have over 25,000 employees that are taking home a good wage and supporting a family, mortgages, taxes, et cetera. And you have people in power down in Washington who just don't care. They see business as bad, capitalism is bad. I'm an ardent capitalist, free market type. Anyone who knows me, I'm a defender of the system, and what these individuals want to do in Washington collectively is not good for our industry or for our country, quite frankly. And that's one thing that we need to prepare for. What is the tax structure going to look like? They're talking about pass-through disruptions. They're talking about estate tax, the corporate tax, income taxes, everything that would impact the amount of money that an individual can reinvest in the business. The progressives down in Washington are looking to grab it and use it for something else. So that's something that we have to be aware of as we move forward. You know, frankly, if I was one of these goofballs, I would have just grabbed the deal months ago and gone home and celebrated. But they're pushing for $3.5 trillion, $5 trillion, $8 trillion, whatever the number is, it's never high enough for them. And if you think about it, if they really wanted to get past all this, they would have accepted the nose under the tent, cut a deal on a number, and moved on. And I made a bet with someone this morning. I'm going to throw this out to anyone here. Show me a program that the Democrats have put in place on the social welfare side that has not grown or been eliminated, that has shrunk or been eliminated in all their time in power. Just show me one. I will take you to dinner next week. I will give you a week to come up with that program. And so they're pushing for the whole all in, knowing that they have probably a limited time to get at these things. But as we've done with our bulletins and our communications and our webinars and everything else, we try to prepare our dealer body for these types of disruptions that are coming, because you know they are. I think they will come to some sort of deal eventually on these numbers. When you think about it, they're all talking about spending numbers. None of them are talking about reducing the tax hikes. None of them are talking about changing some of the things that would be very detrimental to the business. So if it's just going to be a number, I think they will come to a deal. But all that other blowback that's going to be caught up in it, I think is going to stay. I don't see any changes. No one's talking about any changes. But there's still things that we are working on with NADA and AIADA, which is the International Nameplate People. There's got to be some resolution on the LIFO issue. When you're looking at where we're at December 31st this year versus January 1, we have probably 2/3 of our dealers on LIFO, I would say. I'm talking with accountants in Massachusetts. NADA has a little different perspective on that because they feel that about half the country, half the dealerships are on LIFO. So although it's an important issue, it's not like having 2/3 of your people you have to worry about. The EV issue, there's an inequitable treatment within one of these bills on the EVs in terms of non-union assembly versus union assembly. On the non-union side, they've proposed a $7,500 tax rebate, cash on the head, on the hood, for a non-union assembled vehicle versus $12,000 for a union assembled vehicle. And clearly it's a sop to the unions that have supported this administration in the last election. And the irony of it all is if you really read through the stories on the Ford announcement concerning Tennessee on the EV vehicle, the vehicle manufacturing and the battery manufacturing, if you get to the end of the stories, they all talked about how Ford is not committed to a union workforce. They're going to leave it up to the workers to decide, which is what the law says. But there's a reason they're going to a right-to-work state, a strong right-to-work state like Tennessee, which has beat back several union attempts at other factories down there. So we're trying to work with members of Congress to get an equitable treatment of the EVs so that we're all on the same playing field. You should keep in mind that 70% of the market share in Massachusetts is international nameplate dealers, sales. About 30% is the union assembled. Nationally, it's about 56% non-union to union. So the point we make to the Congress folks is you're going to have a severe impact to the consumer in Massachusetts if you pursue these types of policies. In terms of the state here, I will say that recognizing that there's a lot of medical disruption, deaths, illnesses, and such. I think we've probably all lost people we've known over the last year and a half because of the COVID or something related to it. But at the same time, Massachusetts government cannot handle emergencies well. So it's been good for us because at the time that they were, before the COVID, they were talking about major tax hikes. They were talking of getting rid of the sales tax trade-in allowance on the motor vehicle transactions. They were talking about all crazy ideas for transportation funding. And there were actually some bills that were kicking around. And that all stopped once the COVID hit. They just couldn't handle it. They shut down the State House. They shut down all their operations. Everything's done by Zoom. Voting was done remotely. They still do some of that. State House is still closed, which is good in a way because they're kind of limited to what they can do. And I'm one of those guys who loves gridlock because gridlock means nothing's getting done and they can't do any harm to us. But the fact that the State House is still closed, they still have not come up with a plan on how to open it up to the public. The fact that you really are limited as a citizen on your right of free petition to bring your grievances forth to government has been severely limited. They're calling all the shots within their little sandbox. As I said, they were talking about all kinds of taxes, income tax hikes, sales tax hikes. We had a change in leadership with the speaker at the beginning of the year, and in terms of the money that the feds have thrown at the state now, the ARPA monies is about $5 billion kicking around. We finished FY21 on June 30th with another $5 billion in surplus money. It's amazing that with all these shutdowns and disruptions and everything else, the state has more money coming in from tax revenue than they've ever had. They went from a $40 billion budget in 21 to around a $45 billion budget for this upcoming fiscal year, and they've got $10 billion sitting in a pot that they're trying to figure out what to do with. Where that impacts us is one of the issues that we've been chasing for the dealers is on the unemployment insurance front. Businesses have been hit with a UI surcharge in addition to their regular UI payments to cover the deficit in the UI fund that was created with all this unemployment. We went from under 4% unemployment to over 16% unemployment in about a two-month span. And then as that eventually came down, we were running up deficits on our UI payouts. We took a loan from the federal government, and in order to pay back that loan, they are surcharging employers a certain amount for the next 20 years. You think about it, businesses did not create the problem. Businesses were shut down by government fiat. Businesses were closed. Employees lost their jobs. Employees went through a lot of personal disruption because of it, and government is now asking employers to pick up the tab. We've been advocating for using some of this $10 billion to fill some of that deficit in the UI fund as a way to at least reduce the surcharge. There are about, I'd say 20 states or so that have used the money to eliminate their deficits. But they did use the money to address their own UI deficits. The state just passed a supplemental budget for FY21 to pay some bills, but they still have the bulk of the $5 billion from that year and another $5 billion from ARPA sitting there. They've held public hearings for the last few weeks, last month or so, and trying to get ideas. And of course, in this day and age of wokeness, everything is diversity and underserved communities, this, that, and everything else. So the problem you run into there is they build in more spending and more programs into the system, and you don't have that extra money. They're then going to be looking for that extra money down the road. So although they've got this largesse to deal with, as they create more commitments to the populace, look for them to reach out to others to fund that continuing moving forward. As I said, I throw out my thing, come up with a program that was eliminated or shrunk during their period of power, and I will take you to dinner. So you can see it here every year with the State House. During Deval Patrick, he went from, when you had Republican administrations that held spending to about inflation, Patrick increased the budget for 8 years by 7% every year. 7%, when you had virtually no inflation, right? During this whole thing, you didn't have any state government people cut. You didn't have any state government shrunk. You look at these states that are losing population in terms of the census, and none of their governments shrink. So I don't mean to beat this up, but you've got to realize that as government is taking advantage of these emergencies and creating programs and spending money and making commitments to the future, that money's got to come from somewhere. As Joe Biden may say that, the cost is nothing. Well, if he was in the real world, he will see the cost is something. And it's going to fall on businessmen and women. It's going to fall on your employees. It's going to be falling on everyone who gets up in the morning, puts their feet on the ground, and hits the pavement, looking to make a successful day out of it. I can't tell you how this $10 billion is going to get spent. Like I said, they're having all kinds of hearings, so look for that on the horizon. The last thing I would just touch upon that's going on politically that you probably don't even know anything about is redistricting. The Dems in Congress have about a 3-seat cushion for a majority, which means if the Republicans were to pick up 3 seats, it would flip the House to the Republicans. The Senate obviously is based on states, and the states don't change their borders. But the redistricting is a great way as a tool for parties to use to consolidate their power in the states and possibly flip what is happening at the House of Representatives in Washington. So, for example, if you look at Florida, Florida's picking up a seat. Florida is also heavily Republican legislature, a strong Republican governor, and they're openly talking about eliminating 1 or 2 Dem seats in Florida and creating 2 strong Republican seats to replace it. So you have a delegation that I think is 16-11 now that could go up to 18-10, 19-9, because they picked up a seat. So you look at what they've done in New York. The Dems in New York are pushing to eliminate virtually all the Republicans. There's 8 Republicans coming from New York now. The last plan they put out would eliminate the Republican seats down to 3. Illinois, they're doing the same thing to the Republicans. Ohio, they're openly talking about getting rid of most of the Dems. I think there's 4 or 5 Dems, and they would push it down to 1 or 2 in Ohio. Texas, they're talking about the same thing. Arizona, they can flip the map to Republicans 5-4. It's now 4-5 the other way. My point is that there's this process going on now based on the census of drawing these districts. And it just goes to show you how few and few seats become competitive during the election cycles is because they cut these deals to consolidate power within their districts. And so when you look at what the House and Senate did up here for their own seats, where all they talked about was we were not eliminating any incumbents. The seats that they were really changing were seats of people retiring or going on to other jobs. The big push was for increasing the minority-based seats. There were 20 out of the 160. They want to move that up to about 33 or so. Same on the Senate side. They were looking to increase the number of diversity seats to a higher number. And right now there's probably going to be a fight in Brockton. Brockton, I believe, is the only majority black city in the state. And there are individuals down there in the minority community who are upset because Brockton's Senate seat was not drawn in a way to make it more acceptable to a minority potentially winning that seat. So there may be some challenges there. Up my way in Lawrence, there's people fighting because Haverhill's being split and other things happening. So all I say is, it's not something that you normally pay attention to. I pay attention to it because you get to see who's staying, who's leaving, who's going to be in power, who's not, just simply based on how they're going to draw these district lines. And it will have an impact on what the election will be like next year because the Republicans already feel like they have the winds behind their back on beating up the Dems on some things for the midterms. And if they can draw some maps around the country, if you think about it, if Florida can draw a map that picks up 3 Republican seats, there goes the Dem advantage right there. So be aware of what's going on there. That's all I really have to say to give you some perspective on, it's not the back end of the dealership or what the buy-sells are, but stuff that we have to deal with all the time. I know sometimes we're not the purveyor of good news, but we're just trying to give you the facts of what we have to deal with every day up on the Hill and down in Washington in trying to promote the last bastion of a free market economy here. Any questions? Comments? Tell me I'm all wet. Yes, sir.
Any update of the state?
Good to see you.
How are you?
Every day's Christmas.
Yes, it is. Any update of the state of the registry of motor vehicles? All of us, day to day, face titling issues, registry
They're home.
Any insight?
And governor proposed giving everyone $2,000 bonus for working from home. I would say that, I give the registry credit when it's due. They were very helpful last year in staying open, allowing sales to go through, being very helpful on registrations, titles, everything else that they do. There's some challenges there when you have everyone working from home. But in terms of some of the issues that are important to us, we're still pushing for temp tags, a full array of temp tags. They have the limited temp tags now. We got the law passed to get the inspection, the vehicle inspection stations at dealerships that need them. And that's gone very smoothly, I think. Once we got the law passed, they set up a process to get the licenses out. And every dealer I know who's asked us, we've put them in the process, they've gotten their license. I don't know, I haven't heard of any problems. Jamie Tesler, when he was the acting registrar, he took over for an individual who just didn't care. And we didn't care for her. He did a great job. He was a great person to reach out to. He's very responsive, and I think it showed by moving him up to the Secretary of Transportation. And we're working through some issues now with the current acting registrar, and it's always a struggle. But the problem you have with these bureaucracies is that they don't respond to democratic impulses. They're dinosaurs, right? They get embedded in these agencies, and they're there. And I think it was one of the mystery writers who designated bureaucracy as the deep state, and Trump talked a lot about the deep state. But we've been talking about it for 20 years up at the State House here, because it does exist. You run into these agencies and you get just roadblock after roadblock because, we don't do it that way. Well, if we did it the way they want to do it, we would still be buggy whips. Look at the used vehicle record book. We passed a law 3 years ago last month to get rid of the used vehicle record book. They're still dragging their behind on approving a process within the DMS to collect and print out the data that's in the used vehicle record book. 3 years.
Well, I think that's an important one. I've had a state trooper come into one of my stores and demand to see it. And we explained to him, gave him your bulletin, which we have, where all the old used vehicle record books are. I mean, it's an antiquated process. It's ridiculous.
Quill pens.
Full-time job.
It's a quill pen process.
Yeah, I mean, it's
The law was passed when Woodrow Wilson was president. Woodrow Wilson. So, it's always a struggle with them, but there are things that we've been able to move forward on. And, the fact that we've got, I think the transaction pretty much now can be seamless, internet-wise. We've gotten away from all the wet signature requirements. So I think, that's been a plus. If there's other things there, always, call me up, email me. We'll chase them down. The big issue now with the COVID has been the manufacturers, the captive finance have been lazy about getting titles, getting the liens released and the titles approved. And we have this cockamamie process of the signaling has to go from the lien holder to the registry, and then the registry decides to print out the title, and then they batch everything and mail it out. And, they really are supposed to do it as it happens, but they wait to Saturdays to send everything out. So it all sits there for a week. And so we're trying to work with them. Chris Conley, our president, he's hot to trot on pushing for some sort of electronic titling where we can get that process sent directly to the dealer so the dealer can have a virtual title to use. Because as you know, we cannot sell a car without a title. It's got to sit on the lot till we get the title. So we cannot be doing those types of spot deliveries. So we've talked to them about some sort of virtual electronic title that the dealer can use until the paper one comes in, and then have that count for for getting the car sold and moving forward. Things like that. But it's amazing that we're still stuck in the 20th century. Spoken by a guy like from the 1950s. I still refuse American League Baseball. I can't watch it. Designated here, please. Any other questions? Well, thank you for the time. Appreciate it. I hope that was helpful. Squire. Thank you. Always a pleasure.